So you can see from our agenda, we're going to be talking about just an introduction of our objectives, some statistics, some of the characteristics of the Latino students. The characteristics of the Latino students on our campuses, the community college pipeline, and then the increase of that pipeline in the last few years, the involvement factors that we have restricted our students from being involved on campus, talk about some strategy development as an organization, as our student affairs, and then we're going to have some questions, reflections, and some assessment at the end.
Okay, I'm going to engage you all now in Juan's story. Juan comes from a small, low-income family. He is actually the first one to go to college. Juan is a motivated individual aspiring to be a doctor. Juan has been actively involved in his church, has average grades, and looks forward to going to college, meeting new people, and making something of himself in order to help his family and himself prosper. Juan was invited to attend a freshman overnight orientation at a 4-year institution, Research One School. Excited, as you all can think. Excited about his experience, he went very positive, open-minded, waiting to make new friends. At the end of that orientation, the next day, he speaks to his parents and says, I actually want to go to the nearby community college. Talking to Juan and trying to identify why such a drastic choice from attending a 4-year institution that would provide him with a straight pipeline to his dreams, to his career, why the detour? His main reason was, I didn't feel like I belonged. The sense of belonging was missing. This is one of the reasons why we want to engage you all in this conversation. There will be more Juans in our universities, and how can we support and provide them with what they need to feel a sense of belonging, to feel connected, to feel successful.
So we hope we give you a sense of where we're going to be going at with our presentation. We want to give you a chance to learn about the unique characteristics pertaining to Latino students as they're entering the higher education institutions. We want to explore what is this community college pipeline and understand the involvement factors and the limitations of being involved on campus by our Latinos, and reflect on the strategies of inclusive activities, strategies for our Latino students on our own campuses. So in some statistics, these are from the last Pew report that occurred in this past year, probably like 6 months ago. The Pew report has been coming out with a lot of statistics on the Latino population. First of all, we want to make sure that you all understand that when we talk about Latinos, we are talking really mostly about our Caribbean population and Mexican. Spain usually is not identified as Latinos. They have their own, they identify as Spaniards. So they have their own ethnicity and other issues that they face. Strictly talking about our population, South America and the Caribbean. So it's important to understand that here in the United States we use this term Latinos. But when we go to different countries, we do not identify by that Latino label, by specifically our country identity. So for myself, I'm Cuban American. I was born, even though I was born in Spain, but I come from a Cuban descent, and that is my ethnicity. But yet I have taken on the Latino label to really have a synergist experience with all our students or all the individuals that come from similar countries. There is a mean age of 26.4, so of a 28 million population that's being reported. We are assuming that there is a lot more than what is being reported because it's based on limitations on our census. But also, if you look at the mean average, very young group that is coming in. But only 52.6% of all the Latinos are 25 and older, have completed 4 years of high school or more. And that number has actually decreased, that percentage, in the past few years. More of our Latino students are falling out of school in high school. And if you're the 1 in 10 student Latinos, that's 9.3%, finish complete 4 years of college, roughly 60% of those are actually attending community college, and that actually has increased to 74% in the last report coming out, and that this results in our young ethnic group with limited access to education and resources. And there has been several attempts to try to increase that population attendance in higher education, but we also know that laws such as the anti-immigration policies that have passed in West Coast and in Arizona and California with the DREAM Act and restrictions of the English-only populations, more and more of our students are not being able to arrive on our campuses. And it's important to also note that from that percentage of students who are completing the high school and then going to college, fewer are going to graduate schools and fewer are going to complete their doctorate. 0.003% of Latinos actually complete a doctorate each year.
Now, I do have, before we get into the next slide, I do want to engage you all in your understanding of who our Latinos are. So if you can just chat with us and write down in your institution what are some things that have come up and from your observations and your interaction with students, who are your Latino students? What are some qualities or what are some roles that you feel that they play within your institution? I'll give you a couple of minutes to write up for us so we can read it to the audience.
And I think my microphone is working now. So if you didn't read the chat message before, in the upper right-hand corner, there's a question box. So go ahead and go up there to the question box and complete this, and I'll get the information over to the presenters.
Okay, so you want us to type that?
No, no.
Oh, okay.
All right, so we have, someone had commented about that they have great leaders that have formed a student organization, Student United for the DREAM Act on their campus. That's wonderful. So some of you might have active student population on campus who are trying to make a difference. And there are some Latino students who are also involved in different organizations, such as SGA on campus, which is very interesting because on our campus and some of the other large institution campuses, you do not often see them in the larger organizations on campus, and we'll talk about that in a couple of slides. And another comment is also that they're seen as a forgotten population. They have enough numbers. We have actually 23%. They're the largest minority population. But yet not as many services or support are given to them on campus because either the numbers are not on campus, as we talked about before, for multiple reasons why, and then they're not coming because they don't see the students. They don't see themselves on campus.
Now, again, thank you for responding. So we do. Our students are activists, advocates, leadership cross-culturally, as well as a forgotten population. And I want you to key in the forgotten population because our Latino students, we cannot just fit them in one box, right? This is not just a, one-fit-all type of box. Our students, like Lulu mentioned before, come from different backgrounds, different experiences, different history with our country and in their own. One thing that's very important and I want to highlight is just the diversity of needs and issues that some of our students come in, aside from being a typical student with your traditional transitional issues, your academic, how can I say, GPA maintenance issue, all those issues that are true to all students, our students are coming in with issues of citizenship status, not being able, some schools not being able to get involved or engage in different leadership opportunities. For example, in some schools, if you are not a citizen, you are unable to have a leadership position or work within the university. Self-identification as Latino. Not every Latino is going to self-identify as being Latino. So that's something that we also need to keep into consideration. Just because we see someone with the last name Torres or Lopez, we cannot also assume that they have had the same experiences or stories of other Latinos. So that's something to take into consideration. Also, socioeconomic status. We have a range of our Latino students coming from affluent areas as well as from very low working class families. And those experiences, the way that they will interpret higher education, student affairs, student life, is going to be different than someone that comes, obviously, from a more affluent, more dominant culture. Now, you see that we have biculturalism. One thing from research and doing our own observations and study within our institution, we've seen that biculturalism is a concept that is true for many of the Latinos that we have spoken and even that we have read about. One thing that you might see on your campus, and you all might relate in terms of one of these different areas, one is cultural resistance, resisting from the dominant culture. This might be one of the students that you see that is a bit disconnected, that wants to do everything pro-Latino-ness, not involved in other cross-cultural leadership opportunities. And one of you entered in your text when we asked the question, who are your students? You mentioned, they're involved, in other organizations and other leadership opportunities. Some of these students that may have cultural resistance, you may see them withdrawn from being part of the dominant group. Congruity, finding ways to find similarities between culture. Kind of just jumping fence. I call it the jumping rope, in and out of a jumping rope and doing the double dutch. That's what we call it, the double dutch game. Trying to find a place where their Latino identity fits with the dominant group. Trade-off, giving up part of their own culture to assimilate better to the dominant or mainstream group. And then maintenance, finding way to feel good and comfortable and confident in the mainstream, but then coming back to their own roots, their identity, and feeling a sense of balance. Maintenance is really that, talking about that piece of balance. So these are some things that you might see that you might not necessarily interpret right away, but if you start to communicate or start to really observe that population, you might see some of these concepts within your institution. And then what is your role next? That's something to think about.
So let's talk about our college-bound Latino students. Those students are facing various factors to overcome as they transition into higher education. Recently, there were some couple articles written in and about campus, and some research done by investigators about that flourishing concept. The idea to be able to overcome boundaries, barriers. They may be the first one to go to college. They may be restricted to the area that are able to attend because of finances, but also about the family. Identity is very much important of the Latino population, to be able to be close to family and driving distance or walking distance, because again, those are additional resources that it's going to be taxing on the families to be able to go through that, to be able to attend. There's a question about academic preparation, where they're coming from as from their own experience in and high school, and then arriving on campuses, some of our Latino students are automatically put into academic enrichment programs, into classes that may support them and help them enhance them, but also may belittle them. Because if they feel that they are, why am I not so smart enough to be able to just get into a class? Why do I need this additional support? And that really comes from the identity of the family saying, you know, we are a community. We're going to support you. To have all the people to also do the extension of support is welcoming, but yet there's a fine line of balance because of that perception of being a handout, being able to like be on someone else's, like being able to be on someone else's finances and support them, and not being on our own. And that's really a strong element of the Latino population about their characteristics of being like, we're working hard, we work hard, and this is what we earn, not be giving up something. Again, there's some of that family values, the ability to be close to family, to be coming home every weekend, to be working extra, to bring in money, and to support the family. Again, it's not just two incomes, it's multiple incomes that it takes to support a family. There is a whole community that is living at home. And then the issue of self-efficiency, being able to really just take care of ourselves, being able to, you know, we see this often. This is something that is common about our first-year student population, to be able to take care of themselves, but specifically to the Latino population. It is not about themselves. It's not about the ego, the id of ourselves, but about our community, about our unity together. And there is a sense of obligation, a sense to be able to perform well, but there's been a lot of sacrifice from the families, and being able to concentrate only on academics and to work to support the school expenses. You find them very hard to always be involved on campus. And when they are involved on campus, there are specific groups that they are involved. However, these are all characteristics. Some of these are anecdotal. Some of this is information that's coming out of research that is being conducted, but little is known about the Latino community, college students, their own development during their experience in 4 to 5 years experience.
And one thing that we're seeing actually more and more is the self-efficacy piece of not believing that they can or that they're able to. Many of these students might be the only Latino in the classroom and feeling a sense of isolation, a sense of just being that individual. And remember, one thing that Lulu mentioned before and kept highlighting was the community feel. Not having that community aspect or support within the classroom, within the residence hall, within the institution can really, really trigger and cut down on that self-efficacy and feeling a sense of belonging.
And statistics have shown that Latino population have faced more adversity than non-Latino population. And this background information is really necessary to understand the cultural values that are inherent in the Latino culture. We're going to tell you 2 stories of some high school counselors.
And one of the reasons why we're actually going to the counseling piece is because some of our students are coming with these perceptions of authority, this perception of leaders within institutions of education. So do not be surprised if you get some resistance, which I talked about before, the cultural resistance. But we have to truly understand and keep in mind some of their historical and some of the experiences that these students might come with. For example, there's a counselor that mentioned, and they're just mentioning this to researcher asking questions, but also it was observed that this attitude was presented to students. One of the counselors mentioned, when we think that every kid must go to college, I can imagine what society would do if every kid were to achieve their dreams. Now, congratulations. Every kid went to college and there is nobody to fix the cars, nobody to fix the TVs and VCRs, and there are a lot of things that are not going to take care of. It's a disservice to the kids to think that every kid should or could go to college, whether their ability or interest indicate otherwise. Some of these students that we've been lucky to have in our institution come from this experience, come already with this sense of lack of support from leadership. So don't get discouraged if you do see some resistance when you do try to get involved or connect.
And another counselor in this research that was conducted several years ago, and we can provide the references for these research, another counselor said, one thing I talked about in a recent counseling meeting, so he's referring to talking with a student, is that the student really needed to have a basic understanding of what they need to do and get to graduate from high school. They need to know that D's are unacceptable. But I think more than anything, they need the basic realization that if you don't prepare to pass the high school exit exam, they won't be getting a diploma. I think more than anything else, the ninth graders just need the basic orientation about what they need to do. Get to the 10th grade, then get to the 11th, then get to the 12th, and then to graduate, and then prepare for perhaps community or vocational school. And we talk about that one step at a time. This counselor is talking about you just have to have short-term goals, 1 year, then the next year, then the next year. But that concept of like talking about a college, a 4-year institution, well, let's save that until our senior year to have that conversation. And where do you go from there? And we already know from research and talking with our students and the research out there that conversations about college attendance starts way early, before even high school. And the thought that gets put into a mind of a young mind saying, I can go to college. And what does college represent, and what does it do for me? When we start having those conversations in your senior year in high school, that limits the opportunity for you to really apply for different institutions, and what is left for you to apply for if you really are motivated to attend a higher education institution.
And one of the reasons that we're highlighting high school narrative is because, like I said before, it's really impacting our students in higher education. We're starting to see that the decrease of GPA of students that may be motivated to go to college and actually enroll in college and are accepted, we start to see that after their first year, their GPA decreased. And Lulu mentioned that that second counselor just kept talking about short-term goals. And some of our students are not prepared in terms of academically how to be successful, how to maintain their GPA, because of some of their experiences within high school. And a lot of our students, mainstream students, they have the legacy. They have a lot of college prep courses, even college counselors that are there to provide them with that information. Some of our students don't. So please keep in consideration that that is a conversation that may be needed in order to help retain some of our Latino students.
So we're going to attach that to talk about the community college pipeline. So we're seeing that we talked about the population. We have 52.4 population of the Latinos actually go to higher education. There's more than 60%, a new Pew report, we have to update this information, attend a community college, especially on the West Coast. And so we're going to talk about that pipeline.
Now, there's nothing wrong with community colleges. We know that community colleges are serving a lot of Latino students, a lot of our students that may not be financially, unfortunately, have, I guess, the funds, the means to get there, excuse me. Mm-hmm. But one thing that we hear, one thing that we read, even from a focus group that we had, we see that students, there's still a stigma about community colleges. Community colleges are, and if you read down on the slide, some of the main things that came up from students, community colleges are for the not so smart. Community colleges are for the minorities. Community colleges are for those that want an associate only. Community colleges are dead-end streets. Now, some of you may work for a community college and may feel that this is not the case, and I do agree with you. But one thing that we're seeing is that many of the students that aspire, around 70% of students that aspire to go to a 4-year institution and first attend a community college, unfortunately do not meet their goal in transitioning to a 4-year institution. They get their degree from the community college, and then they go into the workforce. One thing that we want to see is have at least the pipeline of higher education also connect a little bit more for the goals of that student. If a four-year institution is their goal, how can we make that transition, if they are attending community college, how can we make it a little bit more seamless, a little bit more smooth to get to the next level? Two-year institutions are great to provide students that may need that extra support academically, flexible in terms of schedule. Like Lulu mentioned before, a lot of our students are working. They're not just your regular 100% only students. They also have to support themselves or their family. So this provides them with flexibility in terms of going part-time or giving them time to work aside from going to school. Also diverse. Like I mentioned in terms of Juan, one of Juan's main reason for attending the community college was to feel a sense of belonging. He was able to see people that looked like him. He was able to connect. And then low into tuition, because one thing that we're seeing is that Latinos that are going to higher education and that are basically within the U.S. are coming from working class, the majority, but not all. So one thing is not saying that community college is the wrong pipeline, but we do need to be able to work with our students in order for them to reach their goal. If a bachelor or a four-year institution is their end goal, we need to make sure that that does happen. And what are the policies? What are the procedures? What are protocols that are in place to make it happen or that may hinder that process? That's something that we need to take into consideration.
Often we have some different institutions, higher education, four-year institutions have relationships, have a partnership with a local community college to say you complete your school, get an associate, and then you come onto our campus for the remaining 2 years. What is not done often, though, is to support those students in that transition. They're not transferring. We provide a lot, and sometimes institutions have more of a transfer type of program. These are not transfer students. They're just going from one place to another place. And then all of a sudden they're arriving on campus, and they're, again, it's like their first year. They don't know where to go, what type of support is given to them. Yet they're considered a junior, considered to be a little bit more sophisticated and being able to maneuver through the higher education industry, but finding that that is harder to do, especially at a large institution where, again, the population is not there. So your population at a community college is going to be roughly 50%, because if you're a Hispanic serving institution community college and then you attend a four-year institution that the population is only 4 to 10%, where are you going to be? What's going to happen to you?
And you know what, Lulu makes a good point in terms of what are we doing with those students that are coming in from community colleges. We assume that they're able to navigate and negotiate our system, but is that really the case? So keep that in mind.
And often this population, we do not see them moving into the residence hall. They're living at home. That factor of being able to support the family. And when we do have students who actually move into the residence halls, who are Latinos or maybe local Latinos, or if they have been able to transport and be able to be like at a distance from their family, you notice a little bit more distance in their ability to connect with their local community. Even though they're so focused on communal relationships, there is so much stress on the student on having that connection piece to their family. And sometimes people, and then counseling is called enmeshing, where you feel like if you observe this as a professional, like, well, there's a lot of enmeshing going on here with this student, but it's not unhealthy. This is part of the relationship, the part of the communal structure to make sure that things function correctly, be able to move forward as a community rather than as an individual.
Now, just to give you some more quick facts, again, and that was mentioned earlier in our presentation, 9% of undergrad and higher education are Latino. 60% of those 9% are in two-year institutions. I mentioned earlier, 70% Latinos community aspire to transfer, yet depending on the state, 5 to 15% transfer to a four-year institution. Attrition rate for Latinos in community college is 80%. Latinos more likely to drop out if they begin at a two-year college. And that's just some things to think about. Is this shocking for you to hear? What are your thoughts about these numbers?
So please type in what you think about these numbers. Why do you think this is occurring?
Again, if you joined us late, on the right side of your screen, there's a question box, and just type your answers in there about why you think this is occurring.
Or any thoughts that you may have about
What you've heard so far.
this phenomenon of what you've heard. Yes. Now, someone wrote that I think a 4-year school fail and helping transfer fit in.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right. I think
Yeah.
that we're seeing a little bit more push in having more transfer programs, orientation for students to get them at least a little bit more acculturated, more assimilated, if you want to use that word, to our institution, but still there's so much more, and we are losing and forgetting about that population. So thank you for writing that in.
There are more coming, by the way.
Okay, thank you.
So the next person has written, it says, some research has shown that some students underestimate their potential. Exactly, exactly. And aim for something that they cannot achieve, community college, because they cannot think that they can achieve a 4-year. Do you agree? But they'd rather work after 2 years. I think there's a multiple factors, again, when we think about that. There is, yes, do I believe in myself? Can I do this?
It's the self-efficacy that we spoke about.
Yeah, and it's that, well, I've never seen anyone else do it. Or if I see someone do it, they don't come back to my community. They disappear. And do I want to change my identity and take on what's the mainstream? And there's that issue about, do I really want to be part of them? Which we do need to identify. There is an affluent, strong, is a commercial community, culture that is in the United States, which some individuals, when we have to understand, they will have to sacrifice, understand the word, sacrifice their identity with their community. Give that up in order to assimilate and be part of that so they can be successful. And I'm putting that in quotations. So do I want to do that? Is it worth it? What am I sacrificing to do that? Let me attend a 2-year institution. I get my association. I get my degree. And I can go work. But obviously we know that that type of work, what type of work that you're able to have, the accessibility of work, and also to funds, is different with having a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree, and a doctorate or master's level.
And again, someone also wrote in they rather work at the 2 years. And you're right. There are some students that their goals may be to work and help their family or, help themselves in terms of financially. And that's something that you see. One thing that we're noticing is, though, those individuals that are leaving after 2 years to work are realizing that an associate or a bachelor is not enough anymore to get to the next level in whatever company they're in. So they're coming in. Now that gives us another challenge because we're having a non-traditional student coming in, and how do we support that person who's an adult, who's had working experience, but now is a first-year student within our institution. So that's something for us to think about, what is it that we can do to provide them with support. One other person wrote, trying to think of how we can support the students in this overwhelming feeling of going to college. That's something that we will address later on. We have a little activities for us to work on where we start to think about strategies and things that we can do to maybe help and support these students a little bit more. So
And it's important to, why is this important? Why are we talking about this? It's because it doesn't just affect the individual, but it affects our entire community.
The proportional gap in class status. What you tend to see is, and we gave you some visual there, because it will have a greater impact in our society. Poor to working class group will increase, which means that taxes will increase to support programs for the disadvantaged. Then more prison will arise due to an increase in crime. Our health stability of this country will diminish, turning into epidemic rates. In our society, we equate success with educational accomplishments and earnings. The reality is, the further you go in the educational system, the more, and I say this in quotes, educated you will be, and the more you will earn. A bachelor will earn you double than a high school diploma, and so forth. Okay? Number of children aged 5 to 13 will double within 20 years. By 2030, Latinos will take up 1/4 of the entire K-12 population. We need to find ways, we need to find ways of how we can continue this dialogue within our institution.
So let me talk about Maria's story. Maria is a first-year generation student coming from Peru. She's very excited about attending a 4-year public large Research One college, and because it was her first choice. Her parents have been very supportive, and they support her dreams. Though there's not very financially stable, her parents have made sure that she doesn't have to have an extra job in high school in order for her to concentrate on her studies. She did very well in high school and was very popular, very outgoing and involved and in her community. She expected college to be the same, but however, mid-semester, Maria feels like an outcast. And if we had time, we would ask you why you believe that, but we're going to flow into some of the characteristics that deter Latino students from being involved on our campus or being disconnected. The first one is that personal characteristics. There is the family values that we've already existed and talked about, that communal sense. There is that financial and academic resources. Was I prepared academically for this? What did I conceptually understand college to be like? And also my finances. Though I may be okay, Maria had some support from her family. It still is a strain, the strain that will be felt through her as she's having conversations with her parents on the phone weekly. And then that persistence, that idea of like, I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to continue because I have not just the weight of my dreams, I have the weight of my whole family on my shoulders. It is not just me who will graduate. It will be my whole family. And then it will have a ripple effect to the rest of my family and everyone else. It's that interconnectedness. And imagine that stress on a young individual, a young student who's feeling that. And then there's a degree of support towards that sense of belonging. So first we talk about the family. So if you are, really you see your self-identity as with your family, and you go to you go away 4 years institution, you're trying to find that new sense of family. A lot of our first-year communities, we aim to make that family experience, but what our Latino population is finding is that students don't want to have that family experience. They want to be doing something different. What's Friday and Saturday night for a Latino student? Playing games, hanging out, talking, playing music, dancing. That's not often what they find on our college campus. Then there's the mentoring. Who else can I follow? Who else is there at this institution? We work at a Research One institution, very large institution. We have less than 13% of our faculty and staff who self-identify as Latinos. So very small population to mentor all these Latino students is very stressful. It's very hard. It's very hard work to try to find those connections. And then there's the perception of your institution. Is there a place for me to belong? Where do I go? Do I see things that are common to my language, to my culture? The food I'm eating, how is this related to me? And then there's that peer-to-peer. This is the greatest group that gives that degree of support towards that sense of belonging. If I find people who are similar to me, who I feel that I relate to, I want to hang out with them. That's why they start making those groups on campus, the student groups. That's why they identify themselves more with similar ethnic groups than non-ethnic mainstream groups, because of that sense of belonging, being able to sense of like, we have a communal experience that we don't even have to talk about it, we know about it. And then results in that community, that campus involvement. There's that traditional leadership notion that a leader is a person, one person, where the concept of leadership is a community. Latinos, mostly non-Latinos too, they would like it to be more of a communal experience than taking on like, I'm going to be the president of this organization. Well, most of the time in those organizations, they don't form in themselves as a hierarchy, but more of a communal structure. And this occurs also in other organizations, but they also view that they see that mainstream groups are less honest, more tedious and controlling. It's not as fluent with the relationships and emotional support.
Really quick, what's the next one?
Sorry, we're running out of time, so we want to make sure we get to the next slide for you.
These are some things we wanted to quickly touch on strategies, but wanted to let you know that understanding Latinos' views on leadership and involvement as a student affairs professional when designing programs and incentives is very important. This is the National Community for Latino Leadership. Research found that there's 4 leadership traits that are really connected to a lot of the Latino characteristics. And we want you at least to have this. So in terms of any type of incentive or, initiative that you're trying to do to strategize for your students, that you're able to maybe take these into consideration. The last piece that we wanted to go into is quickly the strategy piece.
And so someone commented about coming up with these strategies. And if we have time, we would ask you to actually, share some of the strategies that are occurring on your campus, if they are occurring on your campus, or if you heard of any. But currently, if you want to start typing that in as we read through this, that'd be great. But some of the strategies that we have come up with is that, obviously, number one, research needs to be more conducted on a Latino student development and higher education. There is information about our elementary, or if they're in Head Start students, students who are in that type of environment and support. But we really have very narrow information about the experience identity development in college. We have investigadores and a couple other researchers coming out there regarding that identity development, but we still need a lot more on that.
And one thing that we want you to take into consideration is that you need to be able to understand the Latino in your institution. The Latinos that we're working with in, our Northeast institution may differ from someone in an institution where there's a different experience, different population, different culture. So it's going to be important that you engage in a discussion, have focus groups, work with your institutional research within your university to get a better understanding of your students, because what are the strategies that may work for us may not necessarily work for your population. So it's important that you understand who you're working with and for.
Really look at your leadership program, how you're marketing it. De-emphasize the individual aspect of leading. Rather, emphasize the interdependent relationship built within the group. That's going to really draw students to that leadership program and being involved. And interplay between the family, the community, the peers, and the institution is essential to the success of Latino students. So leadership programs that highlight the communal sense really are going to benefit from getting these students involved. Connecting the Latino parents, their extended families, and the local Latino community towards welcome receptions, supporting documents, translating the in different languages, going out there rather than saying, hey, we're going to have an open house here on campus. Go to the local community, like the community college and a community center. Everywhere there is that. There is a community center. Find it. Bring out there. And it doesn't have to be just admissions who's doing that. It could be student life, student affairs who are going out there talking about the experiences that their students can have on campus.
And 2 of you wrote, one first wrote that there's living and learning communities, and that is great in terms of having a leadership, community leadership opportunity for these students, as well as connecting this living learning community with outside Latinos from the surrounding community around your university. Another person wrote in that they have Antojitos Festival, kind of cultural festival that can get a group of students together, Latino and non-Latino, to talk about and taste and just experience the culture itself and empower the Latino students on campus.
And then we talked about there's also the Hispanic Heritage Month, talking about being able to bring in major speakers.
Yes.
And that is not limited to just that one month from September 15th to October 15th, but interweaving that throughout the year and how that is supported and marketed throughout the campus. And that community and support network are the vital component of the Latino student's life. As leaders, these Latino students carry a heavier burden on their shoulders than their counterparts.
Yeah.
Leadership programs must reach out to the local Latino communities and provide a connection to the students on campus. So being involved and being connected to a Latino leader that is doing community work at a nonprofit, at their local community center, or in the district, or working in the government and the governor's office, really going to have that aspiration and that connectedness to the Latino students on their campus.
That's right.
You know, and it's wonderful that we do a lot of these great programs of celebrations of food and festivals. We definitely want to have that and continue that. But what else are we doing to make those connections? I know I personally am telling students, like, I'm always like, I'm Latina, I have a doctorate. Oh, really? Well, I can't believe you did that. And talk about what that experience has been for me. Because it is something that is very unique, it's very hard, and you have to self-identify with that and self-share that information. And it's very hard because, again, those communal opportunities to make connections are not as easy as we think for our Latino students on campus. We often just isolate ourselves. Whether the students are with the students, with faculty, and student alike, we have this ability to cross everything, across all the barriers, but we still need to make a lot of extra effort in making those connections.
And one thing that I really want to emphasize is that you don't have to be Latino yourself in order to support or to advocate for this group. Please understand that an ally is an ally from any background, okay? As long as you have that will to help, then it will be there. You need to understand your students, and it's important that providing an ear, listening to these students, and then providing a voice when that voice is absent or silent is going to be important for these Latino students on campus.
And as you can read on this quote by Ortiz in 2004, it expressed that the Latino presence causes us in higher education community to reconsider our basic assumptions as we construct these living environments and opportunities that all students are to participate fully.
Remember, your advocacy for these Latino students is basically enhancing the college experience for all. Thank you. That's all we have, and we want to leave this open for preguntas or questions that you may have. Thank you again for your engagement as well.
Thank you for that. If you have any questions, go ahead and get them in quickly so we can go to the next one. But great information, and a lot of people on Twitter commenting about it also. It was great information because there's not always, there may be Latino students on the campus, but maybe not professionals, and so they don't get the appropriate training in this area that they need. So thank you for this. And also, if people are interested in learning more about this, we did a webinar this summer on immigration issues in higher education, specifically around that of Arizona. So if you go to studentaffairs.tv, you can find that presentation on there.
And Jeff, that is so important for us as professionals to keep abreast of all the issues and current events that are out there in terms of our students and our population, so we can serve them best and understand what some of the needs might be, or some of the policies that are coming in place that may affect these students. So thank you for highlighting that, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely. And that one, I believe, is just going to continue to grow around the immigration issue. It's not going to go away anytime soon.
Yeah.
I don't see any questions come in, so we'll go ahead and end the webinar now. But thank you so much for this information. We are recording all of these webinars, and we'll post these online. It'll probably end up being after the holidays before they all get posted online, but we'll post them as soon as we can.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. Good luck with everyone. We have our contact information out there, I think. But if you need to contact us, lulu@udel.edu.
And for me, Samantha is slopez, Lopez, @udel.edu.